I'm now joined by Chris Bishop, Managing Editor of Forbes Africa magazine. He joins me now for the latest on the news, especially the edition of the Forbes Africa magazine for the month of July, not so?
Absolutely. It's the new one. It's just out the last couple of days. And this is an historic one because this is the first time we've ever had anybody who's not based in Africa.
Why would you do that?
Well, because basically to cut a long story short, we've got a lot of people, we've been through a lot of the list of billionaires now, but what we do, we always try and weigh up a cover on its importance. Number one, wealth. I mean, this guy's $975 million. This is Anuljit Singh, by the way. He's the father of healthcare in India. He's one of the biggest names in business in the world, in fact. And he built this business there. At one time, he was the largest taxpayer in the entire Indian continent. He's got massive business. But the reason we decided to do it is because he had come here to invest. He's an entrepreneur, to invest in buying up large areas of the Western Cape. He spent something like $35 million. And at the time, when a lot of people are talking about foreign investment and is Africa and South Africa, is it a risk? You know, is there an issue over land? You've got a billionaire here virtually who goes and plows in $35 million overnight in wine farms down near Franschhoek in the Western Cape. And it's actually quite an interesting story how he's done this. And that's the reason why we thought in the end it was worthy of having somebody from outside. Explain that to us. Someone in healthcare and insurance and moving into wine. Big industry in India, massive industry in India. I mean, he's made his money. I mean, I think he's in his near his 70s, but he's made his money. And what he decided to do was he wants to get into wine farming. He wants to get his own label going, etc., etc. And it's an interesting backstory because his daughter came here for the 2010 World Cup. Just to go and see some games and a bit of tourism, watch the football. And then she went home and said, "Dad, I've just been to this amazing country called South Africa. I think you should go." So he comes first time, drops in here and thinks, wow, this is some place to invest money. And it's creating jobs, it's creating wealth. So we thought it was a good story. Why a $975 million tycoon is buying a slice of Africa. Well, we're certainly happy to hear that. But also quite a bit has happened in the first half of the year and even in the most recent weeks, Chris. So what else is in the magazine that obviously highlights economic transformation as well as significant events that took place? Well, yeah, I mean, one of my favourites from this month is, and obviously we've been talking a lot about WEF in this issue, also talking about Nigeria when they're going to get their cabinet. But one of my favourites here was My Worst Day, which is one of my favourite columns. And this gentleman here, he's from West Africa. He's based in this country. His name's Dare Okuju. And it's a fascinating story. This man was a golden child. He had good parents. He grew up. He got money easily, got $500,000 to start his business in telecoms, mobile financial services, in fact. And then everything fell apart. I mean, he lost his business. He did one or two poor deals. His turnover plunged. Everything happened. He's got his electricity cut off to his house, so he had to go with his kids outside and have a little barbecue on his own, a little braai, and he used to try and make it fun for the kids so they wouldn't realize that they were in extreme poverty. And then one time, to make matters worse, he was on business, trying to save his business. He was in Côte d'Ivoire, and he got a phone call from the security guard say, "Sorry sir, your home's just been broken into and it's a mess." And again, that's how we got the headline. He said in the background he could hear his children crying. In the background is this guy, and it was his lowest point. And he came back and he refused to give in, he fought back, and he's turned his business around. It's an incredible story. And this guy was crying, he was weeping when he was telling us this story. And again, one of the many wonderful stories that we have every month. This is another one of my favorites as well, from WEF, which I picked up. This one here, I mean, it's a sign of the times. We talk here about, I met this young man from Kenya. You can read his story when you buy the magazine, but he sat down, started talking, and he works for RMB. He's in charge of a $2 billion investment fund in Africa, and he's age 38. Yeah. And I told him 10 years ago it would have been unheard of, and 20 years ago it would have been unthinkable. When a young man like that running a massive fund, etc., as we know, the continent is a bit patriarchal when it comes to such things, but amazing, fresh-eyed, fresh stories. This is what we do in Forbes Africa. We get those stories that are happening, the stories that are changing, you know what I mean? And
speaking of something in their 30s, not only did you recently have a publication on 30 under 30,
yes.
but something else that's going to reach 34 years is something personal to you.
Oh yes, on
Maybe
Monday.
your age.
On Monday, and I don't look old enough, but afraid I am. It'll be 34 years since I started in journalism, and I was lucky. I come from a very small town where people didn't go very far, but I saw all continents of this earth before I was 30.
Having said that, though, Chris, I want us to explore the theme of the changing African story and the changing African narrative, which is obviously displayed by what you write in Forbes Africa.
This is why I love this job so much, and the fact that 20 years ago when I first came here as a journalist to work, the story was about war, uprisings, decline, crumbling roads, crumbling everything. And 20 years' time, all of a sudden, the rest of the world's starting to wake up to what the possibilities and the business possibilities of this continent. I mean, even this channel is part of that. And certainly this magazine is a big proponent of that. And sure, this continent has problems. The world has problems.
Yeah.
But this continent also has a tremendous drive. And the entrepreneurs that we cover every month in this magazine, I mean, look at this. And this guy here, he's a street trader.
PhD from the street.
He's got a PhD in street trading. I'm not kidding you, because we interviewed his the supervisor of his PhD. This guy started studying street trading in the Western Cape. He'd already got his degree. He comes from quite a sort of reasonably well-off family in West Africa. And he decides he wants to do a PhD, and he's passed. It took him about 6 years. There was a lot of fighting with his supervisor about it, but he's finally got it. This man from Cameroon, you can buy a hat off on the streets of Cape Town, and there he is. He's got a PhD in street trading. I kid you not.
Phenomenal.
We get the stories that no one else gets.
Precisely. Chris, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you
We're certainly looking forward to getting our hands on that July issue of the Forbes Africa magazine. A big thank you once more to Chris Bishop, the managing editor of Forbes Africa magazine.